Please, could we all be upstanding to observe the South African national anthem and the African Union anthem? Fantastic. You may be seated. Thank you so much. So my ID book is Tami Nkadimeng. I married into the Nkadimeng clan, so I wasn't born in Nkadimeng, but I've been happily in Nkadimeng for a number of years. But what I'm known as on global stages throughout the world, global redundancy, is the message architect. This is because I love to break and I love to build words. And I believe that nothing in this world can be actually built without communication. no business, no relationship, no collaboration. Communication is quite imperative. The reason why I chose the name, the message architect, is because I started to realize that we have a lot of these conversations that are happening internationally, but the jargon that we're using doesn't allow everybody in humanity to know what it is we are pushing forward. So once humanity and society actually knows what we're pushing forward, we'll be able to reach a lot more things, including SDGs, a lot quicker. Obviously, I'm a creative, so I started breaking down letters and words, and I did the same for today as well. So I know that SSCN stands for Sports for Social Change Network, obviously for Africa. But I took the liberty of taking that acronym and broke it down. I started to look at the moments that really changed society and socially through sports. I mean, let's think of Doratu Tulu, the first Black African to ever win an Olympic title. She showed that Africa is actually super capable of doing what the rest of the world can do. Let's think of the 2010 Soccer World Cup. We showed that when given the opportunity, we're able to deliver as Africans even better than what the world thinks we can do. Let's think of the wins, the Rugby World Cups, 1995, 2019, 2023. It was beautiful to watch that social change happen amongst Africans. It wasn't about country versus country any longer. It was about Africa has got to win, but also let's expose the African children and change society to show them there's so much more to sport than actually the balls and the white lines. You can utilize it for influence, for change. Look at how Siya Kolisi's life completely changed once he joined rugby. I had the privilege of also exposing tennis to young kids in townships last year with Venus Williams, just teaching them that it's not just soccer and rugby. There's so much more that we can do that's inclusive for boys, for girls, for those who are gender neutral, for those who don't want to conform to gender. I mean, recently we just had AFCON. My heart was shattered for obvious reasons when South Africa lost to Nigeria. But it was such a simple switch over to supporting Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire because we have had to learn what social development stands for and what unity means. It wasn't about the team that won. It was about launching the most successful AFCON so the world can see that we as Africans are capable of hosting global standard sports activities to advance that. After having looked at that, I then looked at SSN and I said, perhaps narratives are being steered by the wrong things. And so for me, SSN now stands for Sports Should Change Narratives. It is the one place where we don't care about color, we don't care about gender, we don't care about height, well, except basketball, can't there. But we are definitely united when we are on the sports fields and we are together. And so with that, I officially welcome you to the conference for 2024 for Sports for Social Change Network. I'm going to invite somebody on stage, however, to officially invite us, and that is Ms. Kitumezi Lebakwa. She is actually the Chief Executive Officer at the Gauteng Film Commission, but she's also the board chair for SSCN. So please, a round of applause as she makes her way to stage.
Thank you so much, Tammy. And let me take this opportunity to welcome you, ladies and gentlemen. A very well good morning. As I was interacting just before the session started, it was great to note a number of people across the globe who have joined us here today. And welcome to our beautiful country, South Africa, and welcome to the province of Gauteng. And we say this is a home of champions. So I welcome you. I must firstly thank the SSCN team led by the CEO, Ellen, for the hosting of this great empowering conference, and great contribution will be made today that will help us serve the sports industry and constituencies better. The SSCN, or the Network Africa, is a Pan-African organization that brings together individuals, organizations, and institutions that use sport as a tool for social change across Africa. The goal of the SSCN Africa is to focus on empowering marginalized communities, promoting social inclusion, addressing social issues such as, among others, gender inequality, poverty, violence, issues relating to skills transfer and education, which we all believe are important. This transformation and development through sport conference aims to bring together key stakeholders, as we have seen amongst ourselves, from different sectors to provide a solution to challenges that are faced by Africa by creating a platform for dialogue, collaboration, action. Sports has been shown to be a powerful tool for promoting peace, social cohesion, and development in communities and bring together stakeholders. We see it every day here in Gauteng, here in South Africa, Africa, and throughout the globe. This conference, among others, aims to facilitate knowledge sharing and learning among the participants. And we do believe that in this platform, you will then be able to learn more, take in more, and give more in order for us to come with better solutions. Government officials, and I have noted some are here today, can learn a lot about best practices from the academia and development organizations here, while we believe that this private sector can also share their experiences on how sports has been used to achieve corporate social responsibility through various programs that have been implemented. Civil societies organizations also can enable us to share their experiences and challenges using sport. This literally says, no matter what sector you come from today, we can learn from each other as part of growing this sporting industry. It is our sincere hope that this conference will be a platform that will forge partnerships between government and developmental organizations to help implement sport-based programs in communities and addressing issues such as youth unemployment, which we see very rampant in South Africa, especially in Africa and in some other countries as well. Also issues of gender-based violence, social inclusion. The platforms also serves as an opportunity to bring and identify various gaps that exist. And together, as a collective, we can then say, how do we close these gaps? There's an African quote that says, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. We therefore believe that this collaboration amongst us here will help us work together and help us walk far. With that said, thank you once again. And from my other cap of film, we do hope that we can therefore start to tap into media to start expanding our message globally. Thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you. Isn't she just pretty? She's so pretty and smart. So let's start with the media aspect that you spoke about. We'd love all of you to please speak about this conference, take the tidbits, the lessons, whatever you want to share with everybody. Not everybody has the privilege of being in the room, but all we ask you to do is when you share it on social media, please do utilize our hashtag SSCN. Don't worry, we've got Wi-Fi covered for you. So it's at our expense. Just your wording. So if you haven't logged on to the Wi-Fi, you go to the Focus Forum guests, and then the password is focus in small letters and then fun in capital letters. So focus fun, focus small, and fun is in capital letters. I love what you said, Dums, about collaboration. I often look at how the DNA in us is also intertwined. DNA in our own body is intertwined by 3 strands. which says everything that has life generally goes in trilogies, and we see that in many examples. And so it would be beautiful to see the collaborations among private, public sector, and academia, because if we all hold each other's hands, we certainly can take many things in the world forward. I'd now like to call on stage the African Union Sport Council Secretariat head to stage to come give us some, to give us a talk. And this is none other than Dr. Hikabwa Chipande. A round of applause, please, for him.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony, for inviting me here. And good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I feel very comfortable being in this conference, particularly that it is a conference full of people involved in sports for development. I worked as a community sports volunteer in Limpopo province in a village called Chidimbini in Venda area under sports coaches outreach. I saw Sisi Betty around here. Yes, she's there. So she was my boss, and I worked in Chidimbini for 6 months trying to create community sports structures. Apart from that, I also worked in the Eastern Cape, so I'm pretty familiar with the sports for development landscape in the Eastern Cape, at least a long time ago, maybe 15, 20 years now, starting from, Umtata, Queenstown, Paddy, and stretching the whole region. So it is for that reason that I feel very happy and privileged to be in this conference. But I would like to firstly recognize Ms. Sumia Khan, the Director General in the Ministry of Sports, Arts and Culture, South Africa. Ms. Keitumitsa Leveka, the Chair for the Sports for Social Change Network, who just welcomed us a few minutes ago. The board members of the Sports for Social Change Network, the Sports for Social Change Network Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Alan Williams, the Chief Executive Officer of the African Union Sports Council Region 5, Mr. Stanley Mtoya, distinguished representatives, many, I cannot single out one, distinguished representatives of cooperating partners who are seated here, esteemed partners in sports for development, and all protocols duly observed. So on behalf of Her Excellency Minata Samate Sesuma, African Union Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, allow me to express my gratitude to the Sports for Social Change Network for organizing the Transformation and Development Through Sports Conference and creating a platform for dialogue, collaboration, and action on sports for development, particularly its contributions towards achievement of the African Union Agenda 2063 aspirations of the Africa we want. So for those of you that might not be very familiar with the African Union Agenda 2063, this is Africa's strategic framework that aims at delivering on an inclusive social and sustainable development and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. So through the Agenda 2063, the African heads of states and government redirected themselves at the Golden Jubilee of the African Union in 2013 in an enduring Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena. So the Assembly of African Union Heads of States and Governments furthermore adopted the Statutes of African Union Sports Council in 2016 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, that stresses the use of sports to achieve some of the African Union Agenda 2063 aspirations of the Africa we want. So the fourth African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Youth, Culture and Sports, and these are our honorable ministers of youth, culture and sports, met in Addis Ababa last year in May 2023 and endorsed the African Union Policy for Sustainable Development of Sports, running from 2023 to 2033. So in addition to the heads of states and governments endorsing the statutes of African Union Sports Council in 2016, just last year, our honorable ministers of sports for all the 55 African Union member states endorsed or adopted the statute of the policy for sustainable development of sports in Africa that runs from 2023 to 2033. And this policy, of course, puts center stage sports development and sports for development. And the policy outlines 5 key pillars that emphasize sports development and sports for development, quickly, namely an active Africa aimed at promoting active and healthy citizens on the continent, a winning Africa aimed at developing inclusive and effective high-performance sports systems for African athletes to attain international sporting success and excellence, a sustainable Africa aimed at using sports as a tool for social and economic development, innovative Africa aimed at developing strong governance structures and innovative approaches to sports development, and a united Africa that uses sports and recreation to stimulate hope and social cohesion for the African people. So in order to firmly align the African Union sports architecture with the Agenda 2063 and the African Union Policy for Sustainable Development of Sports in Africa that I just mentioned, the African Union Sports Council Secretariat is facilitating the development of an inclusive African Union Sports Council strategic plan that is going to run from 2024 to 2028 through a broad consultative process that is aimed at mainstreaming and using the transformative power of sports to empower youth, women, girls, and to promote inclusive and human-centered sustainable development in line with the African Union Agenda 2063 aspirations of the Africa we want. So the Continental Strategic Plan is being developed in a very, very participatory and planning process with key stakeholders of the African Union Sports Council system, including the Sports for Development and Peace movement that have been the main drivers of sports for development on the continent for the past 4 decades. As I mentioned yesterday in one of our discussions, Mr. Alan Williams represents the Sports for Development and Peace movement on the African Union Sports Council Technical Committee on Sports for Development. So the African Union Sports Council Technical Committee on Sports for Development, this is a statutory committee which was endorsed in the statutes of African Union Sports Council that was adopted by the African heads of states and governments in 2016. So Mr. Williams, as I mentioned, he's also a member of the task team drafting the strategic plan, coordinating input from the Sports for Development and Peace stakeholders to strengthen the use of sport to build an equitable, active, and sustainable Africa, among others. So what does that mean exactly in terms of the drafting of this strategic plan and the processes that go with it? So right now, the task team put together a 0 draft with the following strategic objectives relating to sports for development. It emphasizes an equitable Africa, which focuses on gender equality, inclusion, and safeguarding. And this is in line with the African Union Agenda 2063 second 10-year implementation plan, Moonshoot number 6. And this will include, sport being recognized and utilized as a catalyst for gender equality and women's empowerment across the continent, sport being recognized and utilized as a catalyst for inclusion of people with disabilities across the continent. And the topic that we broadly discussed yesterday, safeguarding principles being mainstreamed in sports and awareness on safeguarding being promoted across the continent. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, we are in the process of putting together a continental safeguarding committee that will ensure that the principles of safeguarding are mainstreamed and awareness on safeguarding is promoted across the continent. So we are already putting all the tools together. We are collecting all the resources on safeguarding in terms of policies, guidelines, and documents to ensure that we create a hub of resources that all people involved in safeguarding can tap into and share insights and prevent or at least play a role in prevention of a lot of things that are happening regarding safeguarding. And we are getting a lot of support in this area from our cooperating partner, GIZ Sports for Development Africa project, as I mentioned yesterday. So another priority in this zero draft is on an active Africa that promotes physically active lifestyles. And this is in line with the Agenda 2063 second 10-year implementation plan, Moonshot number 6. And here we are emphasizing quality physical education and sports in schools for all learners to ensure that it is systematically promoted, regular participation in physical activities and sports or sports for all being promoted across the continent, national, regional, and continental institutional sports and recreation policies and programs being promoted, and indigenous and traditional games also being promoted. And here we are also encouraging development of basic community sports infrastructure and safe spaces for physical activities and sports. And the next priority is Sustainable Africa, which promotes sports as a tool for sustainable and inclusive development, which falls within the African Union Agenda 2063 second 10-year implementation, Moonshots 1 and 2. And here we emphasize sport as a tool for promoting education, employability, and sustainable livelihood. We also look at sport and its values being utilized to empower young people to become active and resilient and engaged African citizens. Of course, no one is appreciating seeing our young people drowning in the deep seas as they are trying to running away from the motherland, going to other continents. So we hope really that sports can play a very important role towards empowering young people to become active and resilient and engaged African citizens. Above all, we hope to and we will submit a recommendation to the Specialized Technical Committee on Youth, Culture, and Sports, who are our honorable ministers of youth, culture, and sports, when they meet next year in the 5th Specialized Technical Committee for Youth, Culture, and Sports in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to encourage all African Union member states to endorse the mainstreaming of sports for development legal frameworks, and these are policies, into national planning and resource allocation or budgets to ensure that sports for development is not only left for non-governmental organizations, but to ensure that our governments also play a role to mainstream and sustain the programs and activities. As I mentioned, I've been involved in the field of sports for development, at community level. And I'm wondering right now, as I'm talking here, whether in my community in Chidimbini, where I spent over 6 months, trying to create community sports structures, I'm wondering whether those structures are still in existence. So this is why it is important to mainstream sports for development, to ensure that those structures are mainstreamed and governmental structures are part and parcel of the creation of these structures and programs and activities, and they feed into the contribution of sports towards the aspirations of the Africa we want, and above all, to help us make a case for sports. So the African Union Sports Council 5-year strategic plan, which will run, as I said, from 2024 to 2028, will include priority programs and strategies, responsibilities, baselines and targets, timelines, and the communication as well as monitoring and reporting plan. So it is essential for the African Union Sports Council to work with networks like the Sports for Social Change Network to ensure that sports for development, non-governmental organizations like the ones which are majority in this conference, that their needs as well as their contributions towards aspirations of the Africa we want are captured in form of the continental objectives as well as through reporting instruments to make sure that the great works that the sports for development organizations are doing at grassroots level, the data is captured and aggregated into making a very strong case on how sport is contributing towards achieving the Agenda 2063 aspirations of the Africa we want and other sustainable development goals. So while we all know that the sports for development non-governmental organizations are the main drivers of sports for development on the continent, we need to create larger coalitions of actors to implement impactful programs. And this is the importance of this platform that has been created by the Sports for Social Change Network. So this conference is a great effort and a good practice, bringing together different stakeholders in the field of sports for development to collectively contribute towards the AU agenda aspirations of the Africa we want. And not only that, to contribute towards sustainable development goals in general. So I would like to once again thank the Sports for Social Change Network for inviting the African Union and the African Union Sports Council in particular. And we are looking forward to engaging discussions and to continue working together in terms of contributing towards the aspirations of the Africa we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will be giving an opportunity for Q&A. So what we'll do is after each set of speakers, they'll come back on stage. So if you do have a question that you'd like to ask, then please jot it down and we will get to that opportunity. But we'll endeavor to answer as many questions as possible. We may not get to all your questions, but we all are here together until tomorrow. So you can also have a chat with them during the breaks and during the different sessions that we are going to be having throughout the next 2 days. Now, I know some of you were expecting Honorable Minister to be here today. Unfortunately, due to other circumstances and the role that he plays, he wasn't able to join us today, but he does send his love and kind regards. But we do have the privilege today of having the Deputy DDG. I always have to be careful with acronyms because I want to say DDG, Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Sports, Arts and Culture from South Africa. She heads up the recreational development part and also sports promotion. So it's quite apt that she is joining us here. Please help me warmly welcome DDG Sumaya Khan. A round of applause for her, please. Thank you, DDG.
Thank you very much to our very eloquent program director, Tami Nkadimeng. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sanbonani nonke.
Yebo.
We come from South Africa. We have 11 languages. I'm not going to try and speak in all 11. I think I'll just keep it at good morning, which is a very universal thing in the room. And I come from KwaZulu-Natal, and isiZulu is the common language. So I'll keep it to Sanbonani Nonke because that's what I know best. So yes, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you to the Sport for Social Change Network for giving us the opportunity of being part of this conference. But ladies and gentlemen, I think we already heard that the minister is unfortunately not able to join us. And it is my pleasure and privilege today to deliver his address to you. So ladies and gentlemen, let me acknowledge the chairperson of the Sport for Social Change Network, my longtime friend and colleague, Ms. Ketumetse Lebaka, the colleague from the African Union Sports Council, and thank you, Dr. Chipande, for promoting me. You called me the Director General. I'm the DDG, the Deputy Director General. I don't think my boss will be very happy that somewhere there's a decision being made that I replace her. So, but I'll stick to being the Deputy Director General. Thank you very much. Let me also acknowledge, ladies and gentlemen, the Mr. Stanley Matoya, also a very long time associate and friend from the African Union Sports Council Region 5. And I'm saying it publicly in the presence of Dr. Chipande, Ms. Matoya, that you come from, or you lead the best
So when
sports council in the continent, Region 5. Thank you. I know we biased, Dr. Chipande. I can't say anything else because we come from Region 5 and we know we're the best. Also, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Venn, the Social Affairs Officer from the Union Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the Division of Social Policy and Development. Thank you very much. Let me acknowledge him as well. Mr. Ollie Dudfield, who is an Associate Director of Olympism and 365 at the International Olympic Committee. And he's been a longtime friend and colleague coming from the Cabos as well. So we wish to acknowledge him as well. Ms. Caroline Brooks, Sports and SDG Project Manager at the Commonwealth. Welcome your first visit to South Africa, Caroline. We really welcome you and acknowledge your presence as well. I know, colleagues, that we are also joined by esteemed members of these Sports for Social Change Network. We acknowledge all of you, all protocol observed. To the CEO of the Sport for Social Change Network, Mr. Alan Williams, other board members present, and to the colleagues who work at the organization so tirelessly. Ladies and gentlemen, as I've indicated, I bring you pleasant greetings from the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture. And it is my pleasure this morning to deliver the Minister's address to this very august gathering. Ladies and gentlemen,
steer us in the right direction.
sport has,
Because what's happening now is Cape Town is
losing
obviously
some of the
pretending like it's
information
their
with
own thing,
technology.
West Grove. But this is actually a national win. It's not a Cape Town win. The concert is just in Cape Town.
Sorry,
You
I'm
know,
just trying to find
so
this. Okay.
yeah, I'm sure you know by now. I'm so
Okay,
passionate about my
sport has
country. I'm like,
over
can
the
we all
centuries
stop
been
fighting each other and fight the
evolving in
same
all of
word for
its
South
facets.
Africa? The win is
It
for
is no
South
longer
Africa,
about
you
fun
know. So
and
I thought
just
that
play.
maybe I could link them
The
up now
importance of
with the
sport has
president,
been
Siyakhona,
well researched
Nike
and
Inamba
documented
yakho.
over the
Her name is
years.
Liza.
And South
Maybe I'll
Africa
do
is
like
a very good
quick
example
intro,
of
and
the
then maybe we
importance
could
and
see
role
if
of
she could have
sport
some
in
airtime by
fostering
then.
change and
Ooh,
normalizing society.
just in case.
It has
that is
played a
possible. Then I
pivotal
know that
role
I'm
in
playing my
bringing
role.
about
I
change
step
in
back,
South
Sisonke,
Africa
I know you'll take care
as
of it.
part of the
Then we know
struggle.
we're at least doing the right things on Bangafikile and then Spaghetti, and we're like, what are they doing here? How come we didn't know about
Yes,
it? It won't
as
sit
part
well
of the
with the
struggle
minister.
against
I'm sure
apartheid,
it wouldn't.
and this with the
Yeah.
campaign of no normal sport in an abnormal society. The isolation of South Africa from the global sport movement, global sport indeed,
Perfect.
had a profound impact
Perfect.
on the liberation of
Perfect.
our country.
Perfect.
Once the country was liberated, it was sport that was the trailblazer in building a new democratic and non-racial society. Whilst apartheid officially ended
We can
with
try.
the dawn
we can
of
try at
democracy in
2 o'clock 'cause I will be on lunch break
1994,
anytime from 1
sport
until
led
3, I'm
the
on lunch break
process
and I'm
with
willing
South
to
Africa
help our
sending
country, 'cause I also told
a
them, I said, we have to get
non-racial
everything done
team
by end of April.
to
In
the
May is a different for us. There's no
1992
time
Barcelona
to do
Summer
anything about
Olympics.
ngaleso sikhathi.
The power of
So maybe
sport
if we
was
could do that,
demonstrated
thank you.
when
I
Yan
appreciate
Tao
it.
was
And then
tasked
maybe
with
we
a
could also look at the minister's
responsibility
calendar
of
already
being
for
the flag
2011
bearer,
to
signaling a
see what
new
slot
era
they
of
must go
peace
to
and
him,
development.
not him come to them.
The South
Wherever he is,
African
they'll
government
be here in Joburg,
embraced
May 11,
sports
and
for
then they'll be in
development
Cape
and
Town May
peace
12. So
and
if that
ensure
goes
that it
back to
forms
them after
part
two-way
of
court and
the
with the
national
availability of
sport
the minister,
policy.
then at
The
least
white
we've started
paper
the
on
ball
sport and recreation, a key
because the
policy
concert genre
document
is going ahead.
in
They've
sport
already
and
booked the
recreation
second
clearly
group point.
articulates
It's going ahead.
sport for peace and development as a
Okay.
fundamental
Ngiyabonga.
policy provision.
Okay, sure.
In order to
Ngiyabonga.
translate this
Thank you.
policy
We'll chat later. All right.
provision into
Bye.
practice, the National Sport and Recreation Plan, and in particular Strategic Objective 29, indicates to use sport as a mechanism for achieving peace and development. It further states that worldwide, there is an acknowledgement that sport and recreation has the potential to promote social inclusion, prevent conflict, and to enhance peace within and among nations. Whilst there is often a focus on the mainstream sports federation, it is our firm belief that the implementation of programs on sports for development cannot be adequately undertaken without the full participation and engagement of civil society actors, the non-government organizations. The work of civil society actors in the sector of sport. Sorry, colleagues. Yeah, sorry, I was saying. The work of civil society actors in the sector of sport for peace and development often goes unnoticed and unsupported, yet their work is so vitally important in nation building, social cohesion, gender equality, youth development, and so much more. It is for this reason that the department was instrumental in the establishment of the Sport for Social Change Network, which has remained one of the success stories and legacies of the 2010 FIFA World Cup. We have since then supported the Sport for Social Change movement to grow to what it is today. It is through the civil society sector that we can realize sport and recreation's ability and power as a tool to contribute to Africa's Agenda 2063 and the Africa we want. Allow me, therefore, to commend each and every one of you for your dedication and tireless efforts in utilizing sport as a tool for addressing social issues, promoting inclusivity, and fostering community development. Your work exemplifies the spirit of resilience, unity, and hope that is so deeply ingrained in the fabric of our nations. This conference presents a unique opportunity for collaboration, and I think we've heard the other speakers before me say so quite emphatically. For collaboration amongst countries of our beloved continent, Africa, and sharing of global perspectives on the subject of sports for development and peace. Government alone cannot sustain support to civil society sector. Therefore, it is imperative that meaningful and sustained partnerships are forged with the corporate sector and global funding institutions. I trust that the involvement of the International Olympic Committee through Olympism 365, the Commonwealth, the African Union Sports Council, and other organizations in attendance would mark the beginning of long-term relationships with Sport for Social Change, for the Sport for Social Change Network, South Africa and Africa, to grow and enhance the work and impact both in South Africa and across the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've heard this quote many times. However, I believe it is relevant for this conference, and I quote, "Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else can. Sport can awaken hope where there was previously only despair." And I unquote. And these are the wise words of our former late president, the first president of democratic South Africa, Tata Nelson Mandela. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you have heard, as I've indicated, you've heard this quote, and I believe that sport does have the power to change the world. And together, let us write the next chapter in our collective story of resilience, hope, and transformation as espoused by our late former president. I would like to wish you all a successful deliberations with practical and implementable outcomes after this conference. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the DGG to please stay on stage. If you could take a seat. And I'm going to ask the previous speakers to join me. If you can please come through. Sure. Dr. Chipande. We're now going to go into a Q&A with them. Thank you. That's fine. Yep, that's perfect. It's probably better so that they could all see you. That's fine. So let's start off, I think, in the audience. I always like to start off with the audience because if I carry on asking them questions, I've got a lot of questions that I'd like to ask, but it's about all of us being engaged and all of us being part of the conversation because there's things that we'd like to, find out from them that they maybe didn't include in their speech. I'm going to ask that we keep it focused to exactly what they have spoken about so that we can steer the conversation accordingly. I know there's many other things that you may want to ask within their portfolio, but not necessarily related to today. You can do that at coffee time, at tea break, or whatever the case may be. So don't ask us about film commission for today, just what's related for today. So do we have any questions in the audience? There we go. We've got a roving mic. So I'm going to ask that as you ask a question, you please stand up politely and you introduce yourself very briefly, just name and title so we know who is speaking to, and then proceed with your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Lucas Tau, representing Karate South Africa. I heard that apartheid in 1994 had just diminished, but when we look, apartheid is still there amongst our leaders of sports, not according to the race or what. Because if we look some codes, they are running in silos, they are running in favoritism of families. They are not developing sports according to the way sports should be developed. So I also teach karate and aerobics, developing sports, but when you look at the federations and how they run the leadership, it's sometimes not good. There's still apartheid amongst us leaders of sports. The seniors or the administrators are seniors. Now they disable the athletes to progress in sports. I thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. I'm just going to clarify this quickly. Firstly, do you have a specific person that you were asking that to?
No, it's general, but
Okay. And what I'm going to also ask us is just the jargon that we utilize. Apartheid was a movement, but you're talking about a racial prejudice that it still exists within sport. Are any of you takers for that question? Thank you, DDG. Thank you. Apologies. For the love of tech. There we go. Fantastic. Thanks, DDG.
Thank you very much for that question. And yes, it's very relevant. And yes, we hear it all the time. I think we must be very, very honest, colleagues, that the issue of redress, we're trying to transform the country that has a history of apartheid for over 300 years. And yes, there are many, many challenges in the country besides the provision of sport. And it will take us a very long time, but I think the concerted efforts that we are making in terms of development at the grassroots level, looking at transformation in terms of a very focused transformation agenda. If you look at the National Sport and Recreation Plan that was adopted by our cabinet in 2012, and I think the core annexure to our National Sport and Recreation Plan was the Transformation Charter, with the Transformation Scorecard. And yes, we have started a process where we have 19 codes of sport that are part of the transformation process. The minister has appointed an eminent persons group who is an advisory team and an advisory committee to the minister that looks at transformation across 19 codes of sport. And yes, we are going to gradually increase that. It's a lot of work looking at each of the codes of sport. We have practically about 80 codes of sport that are recognized codes of sport. We do not fund all of them because of the vast, I mean, they are huge, the need is much greater than what we as government can make available to our sports federations. But I do know that we have engagements on an ongoing basis with our sports federations to look at their plans, to assist them. And where we see, yes, that there is no transformation, then there are consequences as well. So I think we take note of the colleague's comments, and I am keen to engage with him outside of this platform, collectively with the team that works with our federation support in our offices, so that we can understand, you know, there's a reason he's making such statements. So let us look at these statements. Let us interrogate it, get more details, and see how best we can assist where we can.
I'm going to stay with you, DDG, before I go into the audience. Sports is a very tricky one when we even come to the education system. And I think it's a conversation between you know, both the Ministry of Sports, Arts and Culture and Education that needs to be had to say, you can't silo them. I say this because I was a child in school who was not academic at all, but I flourished within sport. I actually made it to the national squad for Gauteng. My son is the same. I'm a mom of two, not an academic kid at all. But unfortunately, it seems like sports is not being brought in for social change to show that it's not just about the infrastructure being there. It's about the discipline being instilled for the children. Because if we speak sustainability is not just about lives, but about people feeling like they're achieving their purposes throughout life. Is there that collaboration that should happen between yourselves and education?
No, definitely. Coincidentally, in September last year, the minister convened a national school sport in Durban. Very, very focused on key areas of policy development, capacity building, resource mobilization, you know, looking at governance issues.
Yeah.
And we have a memorandum of understanding that was signed between the two ministers of sport and the Minister of Education. That memorandum of understanding came to an end, and hence the sports in Durban was actually going to give effect to what the new MOU between the two ministers would be like.
Okay.
So that signing of a new MOU is imminent.
Okay.
But clearly the area of education and the area of school sport cannot be overemphasized. School sport is the bedrock of development. It's where your your champions are actually developed and identified as we take them through the high performance arena. Physical education in schools, teaching all of the skills of the different codes of sport, including the life skills, is not as robust as it used to be. In fact, there are schools that have no physical education. So I think we are actually making this special call to the Department of Basic Education to look at physical education as a standalone subject as well, so that young children can start learning the skills at that level. Their talents then be identified as they make their pathway up the sporting excellence strata.
Okay, thank you for that. And of course, this is in relation to South Africa, and we're speaking about Africa in totality. So the learnings from Africa can then be taken, from South Africa can be taken to other countries. I see there's a hand there.
Good morning. Good morning to the panel. Thank you for those wonderful speeches. My name is Siabulela Luilane, and I am coming from the South African Football Players Union. Even though some of my questions might actually not be directly related to football, and I'll try to make it as brief as possible. One, I just want to take you back a little bit to yesterday when we were talking about safeguarding. My question is, where is the Department of Women and Children when it comes to all this? Because I do believe that they are supposed to be a support system to the Department of Sport. We can throw everything to the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, but I do believe that they've got a role to play in some of the challenges that we are experiencing. Secondly, the Commission for Gender Equality as well, because I believe last year and a couple of years back, there was a policy that was being drafted on women in sport. And I'm not sure if that ever got finalized or anything like that, but I'm still yet to see the final document to that policy that was talking about women in sports.
We're going to have to keep it at 2 because there's quite a lot of hands and we want to get through as
Okay.
many people
Okay,
as.
so
So if we
the-
can keep it to those 2 and then you can ask the other ones during coffee break. Otherwise, they will spend quite a lot of time just answering your questions and won't get to the other people in the audience. Thank you.
Can I please just say this one just to the fellow?
Can we get through the other hands? And if we have time, then we will come back to you. Thank you so much. Have you made notes of those questions? Maybe we'll take a couple of questions and then we'll come back to the answers. There's a hand here that's been up for a while to the team.
Good morning and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Witumelo Munoketi. I'm representing the Youth in Africa, Bright Star Foundation and the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. My own comes to, I think it applies to both the speakers as well. There's no collaboration between governments and between departments where sports and youth is concerned. Could there be an avenue where your organization becomes that, so that all the information can be channeled from children in the rural areas, substance abusers, youth in prisons, education as well? Because the Department of Arts and Culture is doing quite a lot, but it's not enough. The Department of Education needs to be part of the panel, like the speaker said. The Department of Finance, Economic Development, I think all of them needs to be roped in to ensure that what we are doing here goes down to the last person down there, because sports is one avenue that connects people. It unites in a way that there's nothing else that can. But inclusivity and accessibility is still a problem. How do we get to the place where the whole of Africa is encompassed through sports into all avenues where discipline and order is maintained? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take one more question.
Thank you. Molweni. Igama lam ndinguLuthando Zibeko from the Luthando Zibeko Foundation. And DDG, I think first I must congratulate the work your department has been doing. The minister also going beyond the call of duty and co-coaching the team that brought us bronze. I think it's commendable, the work you've been doing, and also on inclusivity, trying to build the structures that we've been building in areas that we previously disadvantaged. I want to talk to education or school sports. I was fortunate at some stage. I worked in the Eastern Cape, and there was a program that we proposed to the Department of Education around school focus sports. And our engagement with the department was that there is budget for that, but there seemingly no capacity to implement. And if we are talking about sport as central to development of Africa and the Agenda 2063, some of my colleagues spoke on, then we have serious challenges. And also, secondly, I just want you to football lekgotla. There's always a talk about football regressing, football doing well. We are now, for instance, our team, Banyana Banyana, I think they are playing this afternoon. And they are not on TV. We are talking here about African champions. You know, there's been a call. I mean, I've sat here, listened to ministers for years talking about this football lekgotla. When are we going to have football lekgotla to address not only matters that relate to broadcasting and taking football to each and every house here? Because how are you going to encourage the next generation of champions if today African champions are not on TV? And I feel that football lekgotla can address matters that relate to that. So I would like to hear from the department what's the latest. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask us to handle this a little bit differently. And I'm going to say that because I think we're borderlining the DDG having to answer to the KPIs now of the ministry on stage. And we're here to discuss sports for social change in Africa, not just in the Ministry of South Africa. So I've re-questioned them so that we can be inclusive of Africa. Otherwise, we come to the conference and we're not being inclusive anymore. We're now being exclusive, speaking about one country. So I'm going to direct this question at you, Dumi, to say, there was a question that came up here about collaboration and how people should actually be working together for inclusivity, to have channeled conversations and information, you know, going to the right areas, including rural areas. How do you think we can actually achieve that? Do you want to give it to me, please, Didi?
Thank you, Tammy, and let's welcome the questions.
Sure.
And as the SSCN, when we created this platform, we literally wanted to, among others, identify where the gaps exist, not only in South Africa, but Africa as a whole. This then helps us as a collective to understand what are the priority programs and what are the priority issues that need to be tackled. So what we are doing as part of this conference is we are taking note of key issues that are emanating, and we are therefore linking them to the outcome of this conference. And I believe yesterday we really did touch on some of the outcomes of the conference. So post the conference, what we'll therefore do is we'll develop a document, identify the key stakeholders, be it government in Africa, all the stakeholders that need to come together to create transformation, change, identify new programs that needs to be implemented. Also, even in working with the government here in South Africa, of which we've had as a great collaboration. So as the SSCN, we are expanding ourselves, we are taking upon ourselves to therefore forge partnerships, implement outcomes of this conference going forward. We believe when we gather again, even if it's a year from now or two, we should then be able to say, these are the action plans that have come out of this. These are the collaborations that have been formed. And this is the progress that we have made thus far. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad you answered it that way because it also encapsulates the the women, there was another question about how is the women getting involved. I believe there's also a scribe that's busy taking down notes of what is going on. So the SSCN will then go back together and encapsulate everything that has been asked and see how they can fill in the gap where they can as well, where they can. I'm going to come to you, Dr. Chapanda, and I'm going to ask, I thought that was quite a valuable question from the gentleman over there, but I'm going to ask it in this manner. How do we even start to inspire future generations in sport if we're not even celebrating the current champions throughout Africa? We're quite selective in which champions we actually amplify and which ones we don't. How do you start to inspire future generation if you're not getting it right now?
Well, thank you for that very important question. Of course, probably there are, internal preparations or technicalities that are ongoing. But however, continent-wide, we celebrate our champions. We celebrate our champions, and we must say that women's sport in particular is growing on the continent. And if you look at many countries, and here I'm not speaking on behalf of the African Union or African Union Sports Council, but if I'm to speak about my country, Zambia, we support and celebrate women's sports and women's football. And I know that South Africa celebrates and supports women's sport and women's football in particular. Our champions of the continent are celebrated across the whole continent. So yes, they are celebrated and they are inspiring the younger generations to become champions as well. And in this case, also we have to be aware of the fact that the conversation around sports for development, it's not only to inspire young people to be champions, but also to be good role models, to promote gender equality, to promote leadership, assertiveness, and, to achieve the aspirations of the Africa we want. So we do celebrate our women, and we put women's sport, in this case, center stage. And if you allow me, moderator, also to just answer one of the questions that was asked by Witumelo.
Yes, proceed.
Witumelo on the collaboration between the different ministries, and she was referring to the Ministry of Youth and Sports. And I should mention that at a continental level, the African Union has clustered different ministries into specialized technical committees, in different areas. And sports is put together with youth and culture. So we have a specialized technical committee on youth, culture, and sports. And this is to synergize programs for youth and sports and culture within the African Union framework. And this is why our honorable ministers of youth, culture, and sports, they meet every now and then to formulate policies and guidelines on how we are going to move forward in terms of promoting youth and sports development. Just in the coming African Games on the 9th of March, 2024 in Accra, Ghana, we are going to have an extraordinary session of the Specialized Technical Committee on Youth, Culture, and Sport, where our honorable ministers of youth, culture, and sport will meet, to deliberate or to discuss on important issues pertaining sports development and youth development on the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully when we have those outcomes, there'll be a platform where we can share the lessons so that we can infiltrate them through Africa. Just something maybe to think about, because not everybody will have the privilege of attending and seeing what it is that's tabulated. So that'd be great if you could maybe share it with the team at SSCN and then share with everybody that is present today. We have time for 2 more questions.
Good day, everyone. My name is Lungelo Pai. I'm representing Top Star Sports Management. In our organization, we use sport to effect positive change in people's lives. We use rugby as a leading code. Mine is not a question, it's more a request from the Department of Sport and any other. I'm from the rural Eastern Cape, in King Williamstown, the home of the First Minister of Sport in the Democratic South Africa State Treasury. The situation is very bad in the rural area. Kids are on drugs, they're stealing our chicken, livestock, everything, cattle, on daily basis. They don't do sport at school, they don't do sport outside school. If they do outside of school, then they will be playing underage at senior team. So there's no structured sport in most rural areas. Our parents are living in fear because when they finish stealing TVs, they will steal the chicken and they ultimately go to the knock in the houses to get something to sell. It's not for sport alone, but I know sport can make a difference. Because I grew up when it was still apartheid and it was sport that kept us together. It was the livestock that made other children go to school and further their study. But today, our society, our communities are very, very bad. There's no organized sport, there's just wrongdoing. To an extent that the police also, you can see that there's nothing they can do because they arrest people, they go to court, they come back. So now we have youth that is growing up in a society where everything is done wrong. How will they be in 10, 15 years time to come? There are no cultural activities, there are no sporting activities. It's just free for all. Parents at work, educators have to leave schools after work because they're not residing in those communities and it's just open. So if through sport, the department can make sure that those programs are implemented so that children can stay away from streets and drugs. Otherwise, in no time, we'll have societies with criminals only.
Thank you so much. A round of applause, please, for that. Sure. Thanks. I know that it wasn't a question, it was just a request. So the DDG would like to have a chat with you directly. So we're about to wrap up the session. If you could please maybe just step up with the DDG after the session. She really would like to engage you on a few things. That'd be great. We've got time for one more. This is the toughest part of my job, is saying I can't take all the questions. Okay, we've already got a taker at the back there. So I'm sorry, I know.
Good morning. A special greetings to the panel. My name is Akona Makalima. I come from the SheRef Foundation. I inspire women in my province through refereeing and become a referee. And I hear a lot of times we say we celebrate women who are doing exceptionally well in their sports field or their chosen field of sports. But I constantly have a problem when we do not have a system that will then attain the champions that we are celebrating every day, because we do not have those opportunities in our provinces, especially in the rural areas. But we will hear people talking about champions that are being celebrated. Portia Modise is a star, but where is she now? Where are we celebrating them? We have stars in Ghana. We have amazing women in Nigeria. She's a star, Anissa. But the problem is, do we have a system that will attain that girl, that will make her a future leader, or we are just celebrating them so that we can decorate them? This is where I am having a problem to say we develop, or we identify, we develop, but do we attain, or we just finish at celebrating them? I know I'm being celebrated in my country, but so what? I know there are also stars that are being celebrated in their countries, but the question is, so what? Or we are just ticking the boxes. We go to all the entities, we go to the schools to talk to the kids, we go to the communities to inspire the kids, we go to educators to work with the schools. But the problem is, when we go to the schools, we talk to people, that are worried about their curriculum. You cannot force an educator to say, be a coach to this young girl or be a coach to this young boy, because the problem is the syllabus is knocking at their back. They need to make it a point that the kids at the end of the day, when the school finishes, they are passing their exams, and they are not trained to be teachers. They are not trained to be medics. They are not trained to be a whole lot of things. So my question and my plea is that when we are celebrating these athletes or these former champions, being men or women, because I know that we celebrate women a lot and then we forget about boys, and then we somehow need to bridge the gap to say we have women that are empowered, but what about the boys that are not empowered? Because anything and everything that is happening in this world is not only being done by ladies, but is being done by the gap that we have all created to say, women, we are excelling, but what about our brothers? Are we not now committing a problem? And lastly, I'll also urge to say, when we are building these communities and peace, we need to bridge a community. We need to create a community, not a community that elevates a certain part of the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, a round of applause for her, please. Unfortunately, I won't be able to give it to the entire panel. It's just one taker. And I heard two distinct things that you raised. Is the sustainability of everything that we're doing. It's not a tick box exercise. What is the sustainability of the people that we're celebrating? And the second one is, how do we narrow the disparities that are growing amongst genders, so we don't go and undo by celebrating all the women and then not celebrating the gents with the equilibrium. Do we have any takers? Just one of you to do a closing. Any one of you? Any one of you? Pick it. Do you want to go, Dr. Chipanja?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Just on celebrating, and this is where this conference, the Sports for Social, organized by the Sports for Social Change Network, is very important, because as we are empowering and training our young athletes, it's important to actually ensure that we provide them with holistic development in terms of education and holistic empowerment. And even when they become elite athletes, we need to ensure that we clearly develop a dual career path to ensure that what will they become after being celebrated as, as top athletes. So that the pathway is very, very clear. And that is important because it is that is going to inspire the young people as well to participate in sports. Because if they see a formerly celebrated athlete and who has blown all the little earnings that they did and now they're destitute, then they do not inspire or become a role model for the young people. So in terms of this conference, Sports for Development, that is where it comes center stage to promote the holistic development of young people in sports. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for the panelists for one last time. We have Dr. Chipande, we have Ki Dumezi Levaka and DDG Sumaya Khan. If I can ask you to all just step here, they want you to have your famous moment for quick photo opportunity, and then we'll move on to the next session. Thank you. Thank you so much. One more round of applause as they make their way off stage. Thank you so much. I think we can do better than that with a round of applause. Thank you. I'm now going to invite to stage our next speaker, who will be speaking to us about collective action. I think it's quite apt that it's going into collective action now. And that's partly what I was saying at the beginning is we have a lot of conversations around the world. We don't lack the number of conversations we're having around the world. Where the world and Africa is having a problem is putting things that we speak about into action, actually. Because there's conferences happening every single day on many different topics. And so it is very important that we start speaking about the actions and we start tracking the actions that we are meant to be implementing from these conversations. So please help me welcome to stage very warmly somebody from he's actually Associate Director of Olympism 365 International Olympic Committee, none other than Mr. Ali Dudfeld. A round of applause for him, please. I'm going to keep on asking you all to clap a little louder as we go throughout the day, right? Thanks, Ali. Thank you.
Let me start with a protocol that I'd say it's fair to say has its home in this region and is something and an approach which is highly efficient. All protocol observed. Now, I'm no economist, definitely not a mathematician, even a geographer for that matter, but 1.2 million people I know is 1.2 million people. So when I set out in a pitch aimed at getting support for a Sport for Development communication initiative, that the proposed approach could speak to a reach of 1.2 million people, I was quietly confident that was 1.2 million people directly engaged in ongoing sport for development program, evidence-based, context-specific, safe, inclusive, ongoing sport for development programming, which is highly complex and intensive, as those who are in this room well know. But in this very same meeting, other non-sport for development approaches, interventions spoke to 7.5 million people, 50 million people, 125 million people. The message and feedback was in the global context. Additional scale was required. Now, according to the World's Youth Report, there are 1.2 billion people aged between 15 and 24, a key target for a number of us in the room. In Africa alone, there are 720 million people under the age of 25. The UN Population Fund projects this will grow to 1.4 billion by 2063 in Africa alone. So this feedback about additional scale, when considered on a continental and global perspective, even if in my view, somewhat unfair and misguided, perhaps understandable. Even more so when placed in the context of the scale, the sheer scale of the national, the regional, the continental, the global challenges we face. Currently, only 15% of the Sustainable Development Goal targets are on track. Progress is weak or insufficient in about half of the targets. 37% have gone into reverse. Now, here on the continent, while the African Union's second implementation report on Agenda 2063 showed a better performance than the first report, it still outlined that fostering inclusive growth and sustainable development all
right? So I've
required
for how many years now?
further
39 years.
prioritization. Think about for our community.
Yeah.
a staggering 80% of adolescents globally, 80%.
Thank
And then 1 in 4 adults are insufficiently physically active for health benefits. This is going to lead to about 500 million cases of non-communicable disease that will cost the global economy between around 300 billion over the 10-year period leading up.
So what I wanted to
2030.
say to you.
So this scale of
to say
these
to you guys,
challenges,
because I saw you were very passionate about it, is remember tomorrow there'll be
call for urgent responses, and responses that are only being accentuated
where we're
by the
talking specifically
intersecting
about the languages
crisis
and whatever.
of climate
That's
change,
the platform to bring this
of
that you guys were
conflict,
bringing, because then
of
it is
displacement,
specific
of food
about the-
security,
I don't think that your topics were invalid, but I
and of
just
course,
think
still
it's
the
unfair for
ongoing
the
impact
Africans who are there
of
going,
the
now we're discussing
COVID-19
governmental
sector,
stuff.
including in our area of work. Research conducted
have
by
to,
the
but this-
International Olympic Committee
But I do.
and
but I do think
Worldwide
the things
Olympic
that were
Partner
raised need to be
Alliance
into
in
the
2023
Yeah.
that involved 7,000 people globally, showed that a
It's
third of
serious.
respondents reported
But it's also not
young
just that-
people are
that's why
doing
my question was,
less sport due to these
so much, that's
intersecting
why my
crises.
question
They're
was
accessing the benefits
really
of sport
about the
less
infrastructure,
due
or is it about the
these
actual discipline
intersecting
being taught as
crises.
well? Because funding can create many.
But I would
team
posit
sports,
that
But if nobody's teaching the kids, then what's the point
the
of team
scale of the
sport?
challenges that we face, the growth of those challenges,
Yeah.
the need
there's
for
nobody
scaled
teaching.
and accelerated response presents a conundrum,
I don't even want to see it. It'll make me sad. Yeah. Yeah.
a
It's like-
conundrum for the
it's
sport for
exactly like
development
that.
community. The evidence base across
I
the
had to go
literature,
back inside to listen
the
to
learning
everything.
from networks like
Otherwise, I
this is
wouldn't know what to
conclusive.
Ask him. I actually needed coffee. That's why I came out. Let's leave that here. Oh, you guys on social
Locally
media?
led, context-specific approaches are critical in delivering
Sister.
impact and contributing positively to the lives of people and
Okay.
communities. But it's not just in our sector. Place-based and locally driven policymaking and development responses is recognised much more broadly. As Professor Philip McCann set out in his paper to the OECD on place-based policy, and I quote, "Places differ on multiple dimensions, as do local economies. And therefore, the best way to help local and regional economies, local and regional places, will differ in different contexts. Policy must be designed to provide local actors working in tandem with regional and national actors the ability to identify and trial different approaches that foster local development. It must prioritise multi-level partnerships aimed at increasing and aligning the actions and ability of the largest number of local actors. It must prioritise multi-level partnerships, again, and the ability of the largest number of local actors and stakeholders to contribute. Hence our conundrum. That's fine. Targeted, localised, context-specific approaches must be prioritised. But at the same time, we face an increasing need and urgency in policy and funding frameworks to deliver accelerated and scaled responses. Indeed, you could argue that articulating at scale the evidence base for sport for development remains a key barrier in mobilising large-scale and seismic shifts in the policy and funding landscape. Consider, for example, that since 2000 in sub-Saharan Africa, primary school completion rates have grown from under 50% to well over 70%. And there's a commitment across the continent to reduce primary out of school rates to 11% by 2025. But only 1 in 5 children achieve minimum proficiency level in reading by end of primary. And there's still not gender parity in enrollment at any level of the education system. And there's a US 77 billion annual funding gap for Africa states to reach their education targets. These data points provide compelling arguments for further investment in education with a substantial focus on gender outcomes and supporting women and girls. Let me ask you then, what's our related evidence and data points for scaled investment in the work we do? Now, please don't mistake that I'm suggesting scaled data is the panacea in mobilising further sustained investment, but it's very important, which brings us back to this conundrum. Importance of context-specific, locally led approaches and a demand for scaled responses. It's at this juncture I'd like to share a proverb from the west of this continent. Now, in my defence, I've been sharing in awe the insight of this proverb for well over a decade. Recently, it has been made famous through the Marvel movie franchise and the Hollywood blockbuster Black Panther. But its wisdom and insight far precedes this. And it says that in times of crisis, the wise build bridges while the foolish build dams. I would argue that in response to this conundrum, locally led versus scaled responses, it's more important that we build bridges in a more systemic and evidence-based fashion than ever before, as a sector, as social development actors more broadly, as the International Olympic Committee, as the Olympic movement. This premise has been a key pillar of Olympism 365, which is the International Olympic Committee's strategy and work program aimed at contributing to strengthening the role of sport for development and grassroots sport as an important enabler of the Sustainable Development Goals and associated continental development plans. Olympism 365 is collectively delivered. The strategy provides an entry point for the International Olympic Committee to engage with, support, join, or even mobilise collaborators and consortia of organisations, UN actors, development financing institutions, public authorities, NGO and civil society networks such as the Sport for Social Change network. The model of collective action draws on approaches that have supported outcomes as diverse as enhanced student achievement in US education systems, better economic returns for collectives of cocoa farmers in Côte d'Ivoire, and clearing complex river systems in multiple contexts. Common across these situations and the evidence base around collective action is, and I quote from Harvard academic John Kramer here, community leaders, organizational leaders and institutions going beyond their individual agendas in favour of collective approaches. He and colleague John Kinnear set out 5 conditions for collective action and achieving collective success. Define the common agenda, institute shared measurement, ensure that there are mutually reinforcing and not duplicative activities, continuous communication amongst the collective, and invest in backbone support separate to the delivery action. 5 conditions for collective success. Simple, but complex to do. But let me give you a practical picture of what this can look like in working to strengthen the contribution of sport to sustainable development and respond to this conundrum. Locally, context-specific, community-driven approaches in a context that's demanding accelerated and scaled response. In Latin America, a consortium of, at present, 21 organisations that include civil society organisations, United Nations entities, public authorities, development banks, and the IOC and National Olympic Committees through Olympism 365, are working collectively to support education and livelihood outcomes through sport. The consortium is on target by the end of 2025 to have supported 60,000 young people develop transferable skills and experience new education, employment, or economic participation opportunities, improve the capacity of 6,000 teachers, youth workers, community coaches, and 500 organisations across 15 countries to deliver sport-based youth employment and transferable skill development, strengthen policy on sport and youth employment across 5 jurisdictions, and understand and articulate the inside of this work through a shared measurement system. Thus far, almost 15,000 have been reached, building on 10,000 of a proof of concept initiative developed up to the end of 2022. 56% of the participants, 52% of the workforce identify as female. And among the participants, there's been an increase of 36% at baseline to 74% at endline, presenting strong critical and creative thinking skills, and an increase from 55% to 77% reporting stronger decision-making skills. While, let's be clear, 60,000 is quite small in the context of the 160 million young people in Latin America and the Caribbean region, what's more pertinent here, it's a collective action approach, and there's an approach to building bridges with key social actors who operate at scale. For example, in Mexico, the consortium is working to integrate sport for education and economic participation methodology into the 294 Polaris community youth centres across Mexico City, and in doing so, training almost 3,000 teachers and youth workers who operate in those centres, which are the government's network of community and youth engagement infrastructure. At the same time, the Inter-American Development Bank, a key development financing institution in the region, is working to include financing for sport for development as a pillar of scaled concessionary funding to governments to strengthen outcomes in the education system. In the current context, which is earmarked by fiscal constraints and funding challenges, these outcomes have not been achieved by building a dam around individual organisations or even our sector, but by reaching out and building bridges. But perhaps more importantly, for me, across this consortium, of which we are just one actor, the approach is centred in systems thinking. The Alliance for Health, Policy and Systems Research, which is a World Health Organization initiative to strengthen health systems in low and middle income countries, defines systems thinking as, and I quote, an approach to problem solving that views problems as part of a wider dynamic system. And here's the crux for me. It recognises and prioritises the understanding of the linkages, relationships, interactions, and interdependence among the different components of a system. When applied with a nod to Rothenbrenner's ecological systems theory, environmental, cultural, policy, regulatory issues are understood as key factors in human development alongside localised delivery, alongside localised relationships. In turn, budgeting and resource allocation, human and financial, theory of change and result framework design, and interventions must seek to influence the linkages and interconnection between these layers of the system rather than just focusing on isolated parts. This systems-orientated approach alongside collective action is central to Olympism 365. We interpret it very simply. Co-investment in community-based sport for development programs is linked to training and capacity building for coaches, teachers, youth workers, law enforcement officers, community health practitioners, and policy officials beyond the confines of the delivery of those projects. That's then linked to institutional capacity building and technical assistance, which is linked to the production of policy-orientated reports and insight, which is linked to public campaigns and communication. Let me illustrate this through a snapshot of the Olympism 365 Health and Active Community portfolio, of which our technical cooperation program with the World Health Organization is central, but which includes collective action with global health NGOs, academic sector, a range of national health, sport, and community development stakeholders. Starting at community level, this is an image of the Fit for Future project in Vietnam. Similar to a number of the projects and best practice that we see across its network. It provides young people access to sport, physical activity opportunities that are linked with education and behaviour change programs. That's embedded in the school system and in-service training for teachers. But the program is part of a series of interventions increasingly being overseen by a group that includes government ministries and public authorities responsible for health, sport and education, national sports authorities, Olympic Committee, and civil society actors, who, as part of this collective, will analyse and assess policy implications of these community interventions. The work will be supported by a training program on health-enhancing sport and physical activity, targeting WHO country officers, health and sport officials working at management level. This being developed by the International Olympic Committee, World Health Organization, University of West Indies, and International Council of Sports Science and Physical Education. Here's the photo from one of the co-creation sessions for this course. This layered work has been informed by, among other inputs, the Move Now, Move 365 report that I spoke to earlier. Finally, the IOC is driving a public campaign promoting the health benefits of movement and the health benefits of physical activity. Community projects linked to workforce development, linked to institutional capacity building, linked to policy-orientated outputs, linked to public campaigns. A systems-orientated approach. But to conclude, let me return to the focus of our conference, the Africa continent. 70% of people in sub-Saharan Africa are under the age of 30. This is the basis for the much vaunted demographic dividend. This is defined by the UN Population Fund as a boost in economic productivity that occurs when there is a growing number of people in the workforce relative to the number of dependents, means a burgeoning youth population. Furthermore, and let's not forget, this continent accounts for 11 of the 20 fastest growing economies in the world. Real growth domestic product for the continent is expected to average 4% over the next 2 years, higher than the predicted global growth rate of 2.9%. And this region, this continent, is projected to remain the second fastest growing in the world behind Asia. But 1 in 4 people aged 15 to 29, or 73 million, are not in education, employment or training, or are underutilised in terms of economic participation. Now, when you consider the global sport economy is valued at 800 billion, albeit inequitably distributed, and constitutes 1.5% of GDP, and there's components of that sector which is expected to grow at about 14% moving forward, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that the sports sector, and then when we combine it with the evidence base for sport-based interventions supporting education employability outcomes, I don't think it's far-fetched to argue that we have a role to play in responding to the situation outlined. It's in this context that I'm pleased to share in 2024 a consortium focused on enhancing the role of sport as a tool for education and sustainable livelihood outcomes, utilising the collectively delivered systems-orientated approach outlined today, is being seeded by the IOC through Olympism 365 and Laureus Sport for Good, and drawing on the strategic input and guidance of the Association of National Olympic Committees of Africa, the Africa Union Sports Council, the Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development, French Development Agency, Sport Impact, and, of course, this civil society network, the Sport for Social Change Network. The program is based on consultations that include representatives from 25 countries across Africa, including people in this room, national Olympic committees, international federations, civil society, UN actors, and development financing bodies, a systems-orientated approach. It's envisaged the collective will help young people to access sport-based education and livelihoods programming, will provide technical assistance, training and capacity building to workforce and organisations in this sector, will support the upgrading of sport for development curriculum in youth-focused and youth employment-focused organisations, will help embed these combined curriculums in formal post-secondary training institutions, and will support the production of headline, policy and investment reports on sport, education and livelihoods, and table these at key policy fora. It's purposely being framed as seed funding from the outset, as it has a collective governance model with an aim of growing and developing collectively delivered systems-orientated approach. While the International Olympic Committee, again, is just one actor in this consortium that's being seeded, this approach, collective action, systems orientation, outcome focus, is central to the way, as an organisation, we will take forward contributing to strengthening the role of sport as an important enabler of the Sustainable Development Goals and associated continental development plans. Why? Only 15% of the SDGs are on track. We all have a responsibility to respond, and what we do as a Sport for Development community can and must contribute, but make no mistake, there's an expectation that we make that contribution at scale, and that contribution at scale happens through collective action. To finish, ideally, I'll give you a small snapshot of this work in responding to this issue that we all face together. Thank you.
It celebrates the transformative power of sport for social change. not only during the Olympic Games, but every day, everywhere. The IOC brings this philosophy to life with its Olympism 365 program. By working together across the Olympic movement, with the United Nations and beyond, we are contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. And sport is our bridge. The world is facing immense challenges. Sport is a low-cost, high-impact response. We enable thousands of safe and inclusive programs to be delivered at grassroots level. Athletes and young people are leading innovative projects, helping communities overcome barriers.
Fighting poverty, fighting poor education, empowering girls so they know that they can succeed in life, they can do better.
Hundreds of projects worldwide are also offered through the National Olympic Committees, financed through the IOC's Olympic Solidarity Development Program. Trained coaches and educators are using sport as a hook back into education to develop young people's transferable skills, to boost their employment opportunities, and to create more peaceful and inclusive communities.
I think more teachers should be aware, more parents should be aware of what the importance of sport is and how that sport can really shape their children's future. If they do not know the power of sport, then obviously the kids will not know.
We strengthen the capacity of organizations to deliver local initiatives reaching millions of young people. These joint efforts contribute to the global goal of reducing physical inactivity by 15%. We work together with communities, businesses, and policymakers to affect change at every level. Olympism 365 is the catalyst to amplify the impact of sport and Olympism.
We invite you to join us to promote these values of excellence, respect, friendship, solidarity, and peace together. Because it's only by joining hands that we can truly live our new Olympic motto: faster, higher, stronger, together.
What a moving video. Only by joining hands will we be able to move forward. I'm going to move swiftly along to our next speaker. At this point in time, we'll have an opportunity to ask them questions. I know I have quite a few questions I'd like to ask Ali. So thank you very much for the presentation, Ali. Please help me welcome to stage somebody who I got to know. You have to get to know the next speaker during coffee or tea break, please. I had the privilege of meeting him yesterday and we had some time. And he said some things to me, which were answers I was looking for from the universe. I was like, he's definitely very, very educated, number one, but super, super knowledgeable as well. So please help me warmly welcome to stage Dr. Oscar Mwanga, Associate Professor, University of London and Sport for Social Change Network.
Thank you so much, my sister, Program Director, for that very kind introduction. I can assure you that there's only one way to go from that introduction, and it's downwards. You know, so please help me stay up if you can. I want to follow from my previous speaker, just to acknowledge your protocols, and just to say also thank you to all the participants, because without you, we have no one to speak to, and really appreciate that. But I want to make specific and special mention and congratulations to my brother and leader, the CEO of Sport for Social Change Network Africa, Alan, for inviting me here, and the chair, of course, together as a fantastic team, and your staff for all the good work that you're doing. I'm originally from Zambia, and I've been here before, last year. And coming out of Zambia, I come from a particular generation where we had an education about Africa and what it meant to be African. We come from the generation of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Nyerere, Kwame Nkrumah. These are people we read about in our education. So that has stayed with us, and it has stayed with me wherever I have gone. I'd like to say that it makes me a particular kind of a person. And what I'm going to be discussing here with you comes from that history. At the turn of the century in Zambia, 1999, about that time, Zambia was experiencing very high deaths as a result of HIV/AIDS. I was a young teacher, PE teacher then, and I felt it upon myself to say, what could I do to help my people? What can I do to help? And with a few friends, we thought, well, maybe sport can contribute to this, to solve this problem. And we said, why don't we start to have activities where young people can come together through football, through basketball, to start educating each other about HIV/AIDS. So I used to go to the grounds to go and do those activities. At that point, my guardian was dying of AIDS in the hospital in Lusaka, Zambia. So then I could go to the basketball court as a teacher, coach, and then do sessions where we integrated some education around HIV/AIDS. I had an opportunity then to work as a volunteer for the Sports Council. And I thought, well, let's go to the Sports Council and tell them that we can actually use sport to actually educate young people about HIV/AIDS. We can use activities, movement games for them to learn. It was that conversation, ladies and gentlemen, that led to the creation of Edu Sport Foundation in Zambia, which was the first sport for development organization, and I believe the one that steered the movement of sport for development. We brought in some cooperating partners on board, and then we created what was called the Kicking AIDS Out. This was now focusing on using sport as a tool for HIV/AIDS education. Professor and good friend of mine, Cora, mentioned here that, you know, in the literature, sport for development started 2006. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no mention of the work that we did in Zambia. There is no mention of how we found a problem, we tried to create a solution, and what I know is some countries like Japan, when they had the tsunami, technologies were created, jobs were created, competencies were created, and Japan's economy got better because they engaged with their problem. What I'm going to ask you is why do we still have people coming over to Africa to teach us about sport for development? Why do we still have British university students coming over our continent to teach us about peace? Why is it that I forget to celebrate my brother, Mutoya, for the fantastic work he does in this region, Region 5? Why? So before I start my presentation, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I'm going to ask you to stand with me, and then I want you to move across the room and ask another person, are we moving as Africa? And if not, why? Zambia, like many of the African countries in this region, will be 60 years this year. We're still talking about potential. We're still talking about Zambia has potential. I want you to do me a favor. If you can get up, because we've been seated for some time now, move around and just find somebody, ask the question, are we getting there as Africa? And if not, why? Are we getting there in sport for development? And if not, why? And in 1 minute, we'll come back and find out from you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's gather back. Thank you. Can we please gather back? Yeah, I won't be able to stop. Okay, so I will invite maybe 3, 4 responses. What are we, the first question is, are we getting somewhere as a people, as a continent? And then I want to know some responses, what people have come up with. It would be good to hear some examples, yeah? So are we getting somewhere? And I'm going to invite my Ghanaian young brother to just tell me if we are getting somewhere. Please, the mic. Please listen up. Overall, are we getting somewhere as a people, as a continent?
We are in stagnation. And
Okay. The word is stagnation?
Yes. One of the reasons I found in your intro, Mataya Youth Sports from Kenya was started in 1987. And they have predominantly used sport for development over these years. When I visited them, I was in tears. But to hear you say sport for development started in 2014, the only conclusion we came when I was discussing with my Kenyan colleague is, we as Africans, we don't document the best practices we find, and we don't share knowledge. So we are just building little fortresses, and we are living in little castles, and we are not working in silos rather than working together. And that is...
I'm going to ask you to stop there, young man, because you know, when you're speaking, I am in my afternoon of sport for development. And when I saw him speak, I was thinking, he's going to take over my job, this young man. So, but you know what? Definitely, the question I'm going to pose back to you, we're working in silos, and please register this, ladies and gentlemen. We're working in silos. We don't document. Again, why? Why do we work in silos? Why don't we document? And whose interest does that serve that we don't? Is it accident? Or is it a product of a particular system? So let's get another response, please. I've got a hand there, my brother. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I speak on behalf of a collective here.
Be held accountable.
Yes, we are not getting somewhere, and very slowly. One, there's lack of accountability. We agree here that our leaders don't want to be accountable. We're dodging questions. We don't want to be responsible. And also, we feel that, I mean, I know people prepare these presentations, and my apologies, I don't want to offend anyone, but this is what we discussed here, that you always see in this presentation, say, we 5 million children. I mean, today, to participate, for a child to go to Olympics, they need to fork out 100,000 in Africa. Then you see a glossy presentation that we are we are covering, or we have about 5 million children who are part of this particular program. But where is the impact? Numbers have taken over. There is no impact. All we see is that it's numbers. Where is the impact? So when we ask these questions, we come here to ask these questions, say what is happening in Africa. I mean, I was fortunate, I've been to Botswana, I've been to Tunisia. The real impact is not happening, is on these glossy presentations, but on the ground, there's very little that is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just
speak on behalf of Collective.
Okay, you know what? I think that there are fantastic responses across. Is it a general feeling? We vote. Are we getting somewhere as a people, as a continent? General feeling. Let's vote. Let me see by hand. Are we getting somewhere or not? If you say we are getting somewhere, yes. Can I see the yes? Okay. Those who feel we are stagnating. Those on the wall. Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to tell you something about my story. So my story is, I leave Zambia at 1997. I go to study in Norway. I'm back and forth because I set up an NGO. I have an opportunity to go across the world. So I transverse places. I'm raised like a shepherd boy, south part of Zambia. So most of my time in school holiday, I'm taking care of cattle. So my dad tells me, you have an option, taking care of cattle or school. It was straightforward, what I chose, you know. But that's me. I'm transversing places and I'm reflecting. My conclusion is, if there is a problem and I'm convinced we're not getting somewhere or we're not getting there fast enough, for whatever position, I still think we're not getting there fast enough. My position is that I'm part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. The problem I created starting that movement in Zambia was that I went around begging. I created a culture of begging, going to countries asking for handouts so we can help our people. I didn't go back to my people and say, what do you have? So for those of you that have a Christian background, when people came to Jesus and said, we're starving, Jesus said, what do you have? Because even me, I'm the biggest miracle worker, but I have to start with what you have. The response was, we have nothing, 2 fishes and 3 loaves of bread. And he said, give me that. I need to start somewhere. I missed that. And so in Zambia now, we have got over 200 NGOs in sport for development, all begging, never realizing that the best soils, the best land, the best climate is right there in their community. So I put my hand up. I realized then that I needed to do something for me, which was to decolonize myself. I accepted the responsibility that I had failed Mandela, I had failed Kaunda, I had failed Nyerere. They had worked at that level. I failed to translate their vision to my small silo. I failed them. The opportunity that my brother has given me here to speak is one where I'm saying, I am retiring from this field, and I'm hoping that the leaders I see here, you amazing young people who are moving this field forward, I ask you and I appeal to you to take it to the level we failed to take it, to ask the difficult questions, to find the right models so we can move this field forward. Because I believe we are moving in circles. We are moving in circles. So what I want to do, even in this short time you've given me, is just to really take you through some of the work I'm doing, almost like apologetically, to say sorry, and to see if we can revamp something. We can rescue a few things. So I am looking at my 25-year journey to decolonize myself. I'm looking at the vision for Africa. I'm looking at your leadership, how special you are as young leaders going forward, because even God Christian God or whatever God waits for unique people to deliver. The Hebrew God waited for Moses 400 years for him to come and deliver, because God can't come in our space, I believe. So you leaders here, together, it's a special moment. It's a real special moment. So can we give you back? Can we give you something? Can we, this baton we're getting from Kenneth Kaunda, Mandela, and all these great leaders that have gone ahead of us, can we hold it with its weightedness and hand it over to the next? Can we be comfortable to say, I am planting this tree, but I will not enjoy the shade. I will not eat the fruit, but that's okay, because it's a relay. I'm just running my beat and somebody else will continue. Can we be that kind of a people? Because I wasn't, and I want to be that kind of a person. I want to submit to you that we don't research ourselves as a people. We have universities, but we have allowed the privilege of studying ourselves to be handed over to somebody else. We don't tell our story, we don't celebrate our story. Somebody else does it. I believe we need to claim that back. Those are the things we need to do. And in my role at the University of London, in my role in Zambia as the leader as a founder for the Zambian Institute of Sport, those are some of the things that I'm trying to see if I can play a role going forward. I'm trying to see if we can open another toolbox, which is a decolonial toolbox. The system is not working for Africa because it wasn't designed to work for Africa. It wasn't designed to work for Africa. So why are we expecting it to work for Africa? We need to reimagine another global framework for us. And it's okay to say for us. I live in England, ladies and gentlemen. I never hear about MDGs or global. They talk about their problems. They never refer to this framework. They imply them, but they talk about their problems. When I come to Africa, that's when I hear a lot of, I apologize, colleagues. This is not meant to injure anyone, but I hear a lot of, UNESCO, UNICEF, all these players in our space, and we are the only ones not at that party. Takes me back to the Partition of Africa, 1884 to 1885. Great jigsaw puzzle was going on there. Who gets what part? The only person or persons missing there, guess who they were? The Africans. You gotta ask yourself then, how many places are we missing? How many places are we missing where people are discussing our destiny? I don't care how fantastic ideas they are, but we're not there. We need to be there because it's about us. When Trump says America first, it's okay. Africa first, yes. It's all right, don't apologize. It's us. We are the only ones who go around saying sorry. When somebody says, how are you? We say sorry. That's a response. So where is the African agency here? We need to transition from this reactive to this proactive position. Where we are now, the places where power was and the narrative is exposed. The truth is out. The media is not owned by one person anymore. Our children will tell you that. They don't get news from CNN. So there's something there that we can work with. In the past, it was BBC and CNN. Something else is going there that gives us some hope. There is a shift in the plates upon which we sit. And I can tell you that power is not residing in one particular place. There's an opportunity. Even the war is in Ukraine, we don't favor anyone to die. But the conversation we're having is that, oh, can you still bring some wheat for us, Russia, because we are supporting you. I wish we can say, can we plant? This is our chance to become a global player in wheat production. Not again to wait for Putin to be kind to us because somebody else was kind to us. So this is going on, but what is our position? So what I want to do is to say, well, I can talk about decolonization, but it's very important that we agree to some level what we are talking about. Because every time I've engaged on this debate at the University of London, I'm involved in driving decolonizing the education there, the curriculum there. For me, Decolonization is really about two things. There's contest, but I think it's about dismantling this historical presence through colonial legacies in our daily lives. Some people are advantaged because of this history of colonialism. And it's also about reconstructing an equitable system. It's not just about going after the the descendants of colonizers or the colonized. No, it's about imagining a world which is more equitable. It's about a new way of engaging in the world, which we should all dream together for. It is possible. In Nigeria, they say there's enough sun. We don't have to fight for light. Imagine if the conversation was that all the sun from from up there, let's create energy for everyone. And let's use our education system to do that. We won't be fighting for oil. But we need another way of engaging, because this paradigm right now doesn't seem to be working for us. We need to either decenter those who have centered themselves. They are within ourselves, within the human community, certain epistemologies, certain ways of seeing the world that have centered themselves. We need to decenter and celebrate everyone. Or we need to leave the center for God and all go around. Because when we do that, it will be like we're going to have a cuisine, a global cuisine. Yes, pulp is starch, but there's rice. There are other starches around the world. We're going to benefit from that. But we need to decenter those in the center. That's what I think. But it's an ongoing process of resistance. It's an ongoing process of learning and revision. This animal, this beast, modernity, coloniality, modernity, we've been taught and we've seen the benefits of modernization. But I tell you, where there's modernization, there's a shadow of coloniality. And I'm not convinced that we've understood this beast. Because when I look at the reactions of my people, we start with the great speech, Martin Luther, great speech, Kwame Nkrumah, speeches, conferences. That has been our response. That's not good enough for this beast, ladies and gentlemen. This beast has got particular features that we need to understand. Our graduates, our professors, our young people need to understand this beast for us to bring it down for the sake of our own futures. There are some things about this beast which I have taken time to look at and fascinates me. I'll share a few. Appropriation and representation are mechanisms of how it operates. By appropriation, it means it goes and captures resources, human resources, all sorts of resources, and it takes the center. So the cocoa from Ghana goes to the center. The copper from Zambia goes to the center. And Zambia then can't even afford anything that is made from that copper. All right? So then the question then is, when we try to paralyze this system, where do we go? We need to have a conversation about that mechanism of appropriation. Another mechanism is representation. This representation idea is this idea that those that are dominant, the dominant groups, define what reality is. They tell you what is beautiful, they tell you what is real and what is not real. And sometimes you are erased out of certain dreams because you're not considered as part of that. So another thing is that I've heard over the years is, oh, you have to, we have to increase the voices of Africa. No, this beast, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't have outward ears. It listens inside. I don't care how many voices you have. Coloniality, modernity listens from within itself. So you can have voices from Africa and everywhere, it never listens. What we need to do is to go back to this beast and have a way of making it listen outside. Otherwise, it won't work. And hopefully you see that some of the work we are doing is to try and understand how this piece works. So at the University of London, I am working with decolonizing the curriculum there. My work sits in what we call University of London Worldwide, and we're in charge of distance education there. Now remember two things about University of London. It was a university that opened up for women to go to higher education. It was a university that opened up for former colonies to have universities, but it still benefits from coloniality. It does that, all right? So, but how do we then do it? Well, I am involved in this work and I see myself as playing from inside. I see myself inside. How do I help? Well, to bring down these massive systems, we have to work both outside of them and inside. You see this University of London as an example, 50,000 students across the Commonwealth mostly, and English Africa and English Asia. What we need to do is to find out, is this education we're offering there decolonizing them? Or is it confirming to them that you're going to stay there and others are going to stay to research you? In a small way, my program has those as figures. We started 2020 with 12 students. We have 130 students now across, again, places where English is spoken. How do I engage with Rafato, who's from Ghana? I don't know if my brother knows her. She's pushing the agenda for women and rugby over there. Well, to give Rafato an opportunity to decolonize her journey, we try to, I'll go there very quickly to answer that question. We try to have a faculty where Rafato can see herself. And for the South African family here, one of our online tutors is your CEO for South African football. So Rafato now believes that she can be something because she sees Lydia there. So my work is to make sure that this team we have, in a small way, gives hope to those that don't believe they can be producers of knowledge, those that don't believe that they can be part of creating something different. The other work in Zambia, with the Zambian Institute of Sport, we are bringing together from the private sector, working with the government, we're bringing together young people that graduated, had no jobs. They're now tutors. Their lecturer is there, helping them to get into that space. We are connecting them to previous leaders that they have not known about. The gentleman there, next to the right there, is the former president of the Zambia Basketball Association. He was left on the side. We're bringing him back and connecting to the young people. Because for me, that ecosystem is important, that we get all these players moving. So we need a team that then helps us to understand that. So if I go back to that issue of me and decolonizing myself, I've seen those are the key stages in my journey, and I'll quickly run through them, and I hope they resonate with you. I am that man in the mirror that I have to face if I have to solve the problem. I think my journey has taken me to those areas where I have to reflect, where I have to challenge my own privilege, where I have to really look at where am I in terms of the systems that are there to help engage culturally. And I admit that the most important thing is that we decolonize our mind. Can I? Sorry, can I? So very quickly, yes, so we're doing decolonizing the curriculum, which means we look at assessment, the way we teach, the way we recruit. How does that help in decolonizing? The pedagogy at the University of London, believe it or not, we're looking at relationships in pedagogy. We're looking at pedagogy that humanizes within the West, if you like. So our students are exposed at the University of London to Ubuntu pedagogy, because we want them to feel when they come to us before they're students, they're human. So education becomes a humanizing process. Doing it where? At the University of London. Very important. So if Dr. Hikawa here is telling me that Africa 2063, we need to be on that stage, yes, we need to be on that stage. And these are the ways we get in that stage. And when we are getting on that stage, there are many other Africans across there who are doing this kind of work. We know that work, document it and celebrate it, because we can't wait for 2063 to do that. So going forward, my journey of doctorization is both unique to myself, but I think it resonates with you. It's about unlearning. From grade 1 to my PhD, I've been learning in English, British curriculum. Nothing, very little about my own indigenous education. So unlearning is key for me if I have to move forward. My beliefs are important. My values are important. We're not talking about that enough. We're talking about safeguarding, no discussion of Ubuntu, no discussion of values. Who are we as a people? We're not discussing that. I am trying to bring that back to myself. I'm trying to restore my own humanity, and hopefully I restore it in my tutors. Hopefully I restore it in my students, but it starts with me. So it's my journey, my story, but it becomes our story, because that's the Ubuntu way as we march forward to that new place that we design for ourselves. So like I said, these two places, Zambian Institute of Sport is a private sector. For many years in Zambia, we've had different players in the space. We had the Norwegians coming in with Sport for All. We've had, the British, close to the Olympics. The Olympics that happened in London. When we have championed this ourselves, for the first time now, the Zambian government has created a framework for professional sports coaching. And as a private sector company, we've gone to them and said, we want to provide this professionalization certification. And they've said, yes, let's do it together. So the private sector is working with the government to deliver professional coaching certification in Zambia. So what have we done? Examples here are that you get the people that you see here, some of them are trainers in teacher colleges, and they are located across Zambia. This course will be online. The practicals will be done at those colleges. So the education won't just be in the city, it will be spread out. Because of that mechanism of appropriation, I've stolen the idea of how the University of London does it. The excellency they have, 187 years of online distance education, the excellency, you see it there. We train them in ways that we don't compromise on quality. It's up there in terms of quality. So that if one of our graduates finds themselves in Germany, the Germans will be happy that they got a good coach. That's how I was trained by Kaunda. I was trained as a teacher in Zambia. I was able to teach in Norway. How do we get back to that? We get back by the ecosystem approach. Who is in that ecosystem? Who are the players? What are the conditions? We get those conditions right, and I believe we move somewhere. Just to move on very quickly. So when we talk about this idea of evaluation, we're looking at dismantling prejudices that you have as an individual. What do you carry? So I've got a PhD. There are some things I see I have that others don't have. I am a man, both in the British and the Zambian context. There's some advantages I have. How do I go back to actually challenge those prejudices going forward? So this is the aspect of this educational reevaluation that I've had to deal with myself so that I can be relevant to the next stage. I've talked about privilege very quickly. In Zambia, we are very happy with women's football and women's sport. But again, what happened at the turn of the century was important, that we used our male privilege in the Zambian context to open up possibilities for girls. So today, the woman manager for women football was a peer leader at EduSport. We helped her get a scholarship in England. She stayed at my home, and now she's opening up possibilities for a lot of girls. Zambia has been to the World Cup for women football, but we had to protect her from us. And then we left and handed over Ghost Sisters to them, and they've taken it to the next level. We need to look at the context, historically, time and space, for us to make sure we hand the keys to the right people. It's crucial to do that. It's enough to celebrate, but it's important to create the policies so that celebration becomes real. and they can move forward with their lives. We need to think of ourselves in this journey as members of a community. I, as an individual, I think God has been gracious to me. I've been to the West and I've done fairly well. But here is what Jay-Z, Beyonce's husband, said. I'm the only Black person at a Black suit party. I'm not celebrating anymore. It's us as a people. I was driving from France through Calais, where all these young people who managed to survive the swim, you find them in numbers. I'm an Ubuntu father. I'm with my children in this car, Audi, and I've got these young Africans looking at me. What happened to us? What is going on? I'm not successful. It's shameful for me. But I need to move with this solidarity, using my advantage. I'd like to just say we need to take this personal accountability and think of system change. And this is what Ole, I believe, was trying to allude to. I'll be drawing to my end. If you're going to remember anything about what I've said here, I'm asking you, as you go forward with Sport for Development, as the young leaders for the next chapter, our journey are shared journeys. Our journeys are shared. It's an active, purposeful journey rooted in Ubuntu and calls upon us to cautiously unlearn these ingrained narratives and do it with healthy curiosity. We need to be questioning our space. We can't allow the questioning to other people. We need to question our lives and our existence. We need to get the evidence, but our evidence, so we can champion it forward. It's really about re-envisioning our role in this global village, rethinking our connections and interactions in the international space, but remaining locally relevant. We can't go to these conferences on climate and never ask the question, so who messed up the climate? I'm shocked that conversation has never happened. You're asking us to take responsibility of stuff. Imagine if it was Africa that messed up the climate. Do you know what would have happened on CNN? Every morning you woke up, by the way, Africa, the carbon is very high now. Rivers are drying, Africa. But we, in that village, we need to heal together, but we cannot forget history. We need to bring it so we learn together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for hearing. God bless.
If I need to, after. Thanks, Oscar. Bonnie, can you join us on stage? Thank you. We're back to schedule, so we'll be able to take quite a few questions this time around, which is fantastic. So the hands can already start going up. Is there anybody with a microphone already?
Good day, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Steven Radebe. President and chairperson of CRIDA in South Africa, which is an association for American football. We've been developing the game for the past 7-8 years. My question is on, well, figuratively, the bridges that we're trying to build. Is there a way to make them more wider?
The what? Sorry, I need you to speak a little bit higher. I think we're struggling to hear you here on stage.
Okay. The bridges that you're trying to build for development, they are kind of narrow. Is there a way to make them wider? Meaning, I've had experiences where I'm connecting with a number of people internationally and locally, but the connection is on me going to UK, coming back, and then opening for someone else again, coming back. When I have a connection in government, I can speak to Sumaya in government, then I have to go back to my community, find a second person, instead of me walking into that space. with a group of African people or whoever is in development for sport. And then when we go back to communities, it has a bigger impact. The reason why I'm asking that is the one-on-one movement for development. Right now, as a question that was posed as to why we're not progressing, my answer is we're doing it too slow. We're doing one at a time, one at a time, one at a time, instead of an impactful development that we need in the whole of Africa. I hope it makes sense.
And then you answered it. So what's the question?
Yeah. How can we make the bridge wider? As a figure of speech, I'm going to refer to it as a bridge that is being built because we have a certain crisis that we need to solve. How can we make it wider?
So how do we all move together at the same time as a collective? Is there somebody specific on stage you want to answer that?
I think because of the two presentations, that's where my question comes from.
Okay.
Yes, using the
Let's-
bridge concept and also.
Okay, perfect. Let's take the next question.
Good morning, everybody. Ilham Groenewald, representing our Olympic structure as well as Stellenbosch University. My question is for Dr. Mwanga. Within the context of sport development, sport for development, and sport for social change, can you give us one or two scenarios or examples what decolonization means within that context?
Okay, got it. Can we take one more question?
Thank you. My own will go to also Dr. Mwanga. You spoke about packaging. And it's a very interesting one, including both of your presentations. My question will be, is the team here willing to package a passion, a reality, not a documentation? A reality of the 9 provinces with poverty, with substance abuse, with passion as well, with lack of possibility, lack of opportunities. Why I'm saying this is there's a documentations that we have done and we are told that it's too big, it's too broad. You must break it down into sports, into youth, into arts and culture. But having worked with the communities from early childhood to a 95-year-old, you realize that the problems are overlapping on top of each other. And the issue of the past as well. Without getting deep into what has happened in Africa and resolving that and bringing back the wealth, bringing back the honor and the dignity of people, we are really rewriting stories over and over and we are not getting anywhere. Is there anyone, anywhere, somewhere who is willing to draft a documentation on a reality of what one sees and the tears of people and the hopes that are dead that needs to be rebuilt again? Thank you.
Okay, I just need clarity on that question. Is that specifically related to South Africa?
Africa.
Or you just want to ask it on a broader level, the packaging?
On the broader level, because we are working with youth in the whole of Africa with programs and conferences where we would also want to ask for your participation, if you will. Because sports is one element that brings even somebody who has lost all hope. But channels of getting into government, drafting a document that someone will receive and say yes to is difficult because those sitting on top don't have a passion. They don't go on the ground to meet people. They don't even know what it's all about, and it's haphazardly done and very fast without building relationships with the communities, without really finding out where they are.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think let's start with that, Oscar. Shall we start with that last question and then we'll move backwards to the other ones?
Can I suggest the other way around?
Sure, you can. Do you want to
Okay.
start with what does decolonization mean in sports?
So
Sure.
what is an example of decolonization? Theoretically speaking, it starts with you asking the question. It starts with the context. It starts with you looking at your history, looking at your positionality, and beginning to research your own reality and come up with solutions from there. Now, that is from a theoretical point of departure. An example, I would like to hand this mic to Mr. Mtoya, because he's going to tell us something about the 200 footballs project. Then I think you articulate an example for me that I believe is a decolonizing project.
allow me to stand. It's a topic I was going to avoid speaking on. To be quite honest, and I was not going to say something, but let me say this. The mindset is the biggest challenge that Africa has. And transformation is a mindset issue. Transformation is how you feel and the ability that you have and the confinements and the horizons and the ceilings that you set for yourself. And we may write documents and papers and conferences, and we remain exactly where we were. So when, and pardon me, Dr. Chipande here, when I served briefly as the chair of the Technical Committee of the African Games, Dr. Chipande knows that I said, Africa is not going to import metals from China. We've got a lot of scrap metal in Africa, which is polluting our water bodies. We shall collect those. Our Institute of Technology shall make metals from there. We are cleaning Africa, we are making a metal. Transformation is where I was saying there's no broadcasting rights that are going to go to Europe. We've got broadcasters in Africa that shall get the rights and produce content for Africa by Africa for Africans. I said no one is going to be at the opening ceremony dressed in any other way. We shall be dressed in African attire, we shall eat in African cuisine, and we shall stay in an African setting. That was the journey we started with the African Games. So the theme you see today with African Games, experience the African dream, came from that point. When you look at what we're saying, decolonizing in a practical term, is where we asked Professor Kaur to run a research through Stellenbosch University on women in sport and ask a question, why do we not have women in leadership? Why do we not have women who are also making decisions? And the answer is that no, people are saying women have no capacity. And we say we shall decolonize, we are introducing women leadership program. And today, we've got 200 women in a year in Region 5, 2,000 women by 2028 who are going to have qualification. We want to hear someone who says there's no woman without qualification. Transformation is when you say, we have the hides in Africa, we have the cattle. Botswana has got more cattle than people. Namibia, Zimbabwe, Zambia, they've got cattle. There's hides, there's tanneries and everything. We are exporting the hides at nothing, and we're importing bows from Germany, bows from Taiwan, bows from elsewhere. When our own people are roaming the street, decolonization is where we say, let's get on the plane. Let's go to Zambia to alive and kicking. Let's go to Kenya and say to ourselves, we are introducing a factory in Lesotho come 2025. We are producing bows here in Africa. That is decolonization. It is when we say, we have cotton, we have the ginaries, we have our people roaming the streets. We are talking unemployment and figures when we are giving jobs elsewhere and we are getting textiles from China. Decolonization is where we're saying we are establishing a factory to manufacture an R5 brand, which is going to be the merchandise for this region. That is decolonizing.
Thank you.
I don't want to go further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think let's go, Ollie, to the first question that was asked to you. How do we make the bridge wider? I love the way you said it, so I'm going to say it like you. How do we make the bridge wider? Yeah.
The first meeting I attended in the Sport for Development World, Kicking AIDS Out Network, I think 2008. This was the keynote speaker. First job I had realistically in this field, Dr. Chipande was a colleague and senior. The first meeting we went to for, at that stage, Zone 6, now Region 5, Mr. Matoya was the key leader in Zimbabwe involved with that network. So I think the best responses to these questions in this context have come already.
Okay, thank you. Shall we move on to the last question? How do we package things together? Because the way things are being asked by government is creating silos when they actually are overlapping each other. So how do we create a reality check firstly for those who are at the top who don't necessarily have the passion for those who see the reality and be able to document it?
I think there are several ways to do that. And for me, the first one is we need to wrestle back that ability, that capacity to research ourselves. Knowledge about us should be produced by us. And I think when we do that, we will start to answer those questions that are pertinent to our life, to our situations, and this is one of them. Number two, one of the things that sustains coloniality, modernity, is not sharing success stories in places where we, like in the African context, for instance. So you can have a success story in Mozambique, you can have a success story in Zimbabwe, but people in Zambia won't know about it if it's about Africans in Zimbabwe. But if it's a success story of another race, then it will be shared. That is so that you can confirm within this paradigm, with this ideology, that we are inadequate. So sport for development happening in English Africa has taken almost 15 years to reach Francophone Africa. We go to Francophone Africa and they have never heard sports for development. And then they're like, you've done so well. How come we don't know? You should know. Because if you know, you're going to celebrate this. We're going to have pride as a people. The province in Zambia that is close to Zimbabwe, it's called Dundumwezi. It's close to my village. I learned from somebody that that part of Zambia has been producing a lot of maize, like for many years, feeding Zambia, and it's topping. It's a top region for Africa in maize production. They actually are implementing Ujamaa from Tanzania, working together. So farmers come, go on one farm, do something together. They go to another farm, do something together. They plow, they weed together, and then they've been feeding the nation. What would have happened if that good practice had gone to the northern part of Zambia? And whose responsibility is it for that to be shared? If a good practice comes from Germany, yes, we want it. If it comes from another place, we want it. Our own good practice is never wanted. So what Mr. Mtoya is talking about, that mindset, that's where we need to go. We need to decolonize ourselves. We need to celebrate where we are good. We need to identify our good practice and then bring those together and push it to scale. But it has to start with our pride.
So for me, it goes back to the topic of these conversations. The things that you're saying are things that we know, right? And you're making examples of farming. I want us to bring back to sports. What do you think the solution is? Because we're talking about the fact that research should be done by us, but we're also complaining that the documentation isn't kept by us and it isn't distributed adequately. So if you had to say there's one solution we need for African sports, what is that so we can action it?
Has to be one.
Well, for today.
For today.
For now.
I think I'll go back to taking charge of our own humanity. I'll go back to that. There's nowhere else I can go. I'll have to go back and say, it's very important that we are in charge of our destiny in whatever we're doing. Extremely important. So if it means research, before any research project is done, we have to identify who are the African researchers in the space. Before any innovation is, before any workshop is done to train sports coaches, we need to find out, who are the experts within the African space. If we don't have an expert, yes, bring in an expert, all right? But we need to go and search within ourselves before we can search outside. I think that comes with us actually reclaiming that. I talked about representation. The reality of us is defined by somebody else. So we need to wrestle that back and tell our story, define our own reality. And when we do that, then we'll get our people in the right places design the course and move us forward.
So Africans must take charge of transformation.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have time for one more question, actually, one more. Going to be a tough pick. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. I've got one question. You spoke about decolonization. I just want to know where our traditional leaders are involved in this, because I come from the traditional leader sector. My brother over there spoke about what is happening in Eastern Cape rural areas. And then in our rural areas, we are led by the chiefs and kings. Even here in Joburg, you look at hostels where we stay, is in Duna. But we are totally left on everything, every policy that is being made in these conferences. There is no voice for traditional leaders who are leading the communities where we stay.
So what's the question, sorry?
On the decolonization, do you have any programs that are meant to empower traditional leaders?
How are the traditional leaders involved in the entire process of transformation throughout Africa?
Traditional leaders, not leaders.
Leaders. I said leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, so my brother, personally, I'm not aware of programs, but I know what I think we should be doing in terms of our curriculum. Yeah. So in Zambia, for instance, we made PE examinable. So PE at GCSE is examinable in Zambia now. In that curriculum, we missed an opportunity of bringing traditional games. What we should have done is to say, yes, they can have questions on netball, basketball, traditional games should be in there. Why do I say that? What we desire for our society should go to our schools, to our children. We might not fix it today, but it needs to go to our children and then onwards. Because we think we can tell them it's important to be proud to be Zulu or to be Tonga or to be anything. And just by speech, we're not going to change them. We need to put this in our curriculum. We need to put this in a place where they will start learning. So what did Kaunda do, just to digress a little bit, what did Kaunda do to teach me about the liberation of our friends in Zimbabwe and here? We had to read about Oliver Tambo in our civics education in year 9. It was part of the curriculum. So it would be very difficult for me to see a Zambian child disrespect a South African because it was part of your curriculum. So if I have to further digress, I would say xenophobic attacks, for instance, because they don't know who's their brother. How do they know? They know if it's in their curriculum. If they know if it's spoken in their church, in the mosque. So we need to embed this in our institutions. And obviously, the traditional leaders are part of that institutional system, but we need to institutionalize the dream of who we are and the vision of where we want to get.
You want to give a closing remark on it?
In respect to the discussion around system change, dismantling systems, there's a policy concept that potentially we haven't embraced within sport for development, the investment and resourcing of sport. And again, it's a jargon that's set in a particular worldview, but the concept of participatory grant making, participatory resource distribution, which at its simplest ensures that localized leadership is fully empowered to make the decisions around the investment of that leadership in the community that they understand the best. I think this is an area for us to explore, who are in the policy space, who are in the leadership space, but also the collective action demanding this is the approach that will best serve the investment of resources within our sector. And there's some interesting models emerging in the Pacific, in Asia, around sport for development and participatory grant making, which are through a very strong decolonization lens, and an area that is worth us investigating and embedding more within our frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That brings us to a close for this session. I believe we didn't do the right thing and we didn't give the gifts on stage with the last panelists. So I'm going to ask you to please come and take a step forward. A round of applause, please, for Oscar and Ali one more time. If you could step here for a photo opportunity, and then you can present the gifts. I'm not sure who's presenting the gifts. Aha. You can do that from there, maybe. Yeah. Perfect. Mhm. Okay. Fantastic. Great. A round of applause, please, for them. So our next speakers are joining us virtually, and because they are, I've got 3 minutes to buy time until they join us. So I'm going to ask the previous panelists to come back quickly and get your gift on stage in the next 3 minutes. So if I could please have DDG back. And Dr. Chipande, can you please come so that we can present your gifts to you and do a quick photo op? Because we only have 2 minutes until our virtual speakers join us. Thank you. If we could just have you there, in the middle again. There we go. Thank you. This is part of our documentation that these things happened, right? So we can remember them the next time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you want one more? Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll now be joined by some speakers online. The first speaker is joining us from Umoja Sport, who's Elvis Nchimba. And then straight after that, we'll be joined by the Congo Children's Trust, and we will have Joel Kindidwe and Karine. If I could ask all of us to just keep our noise level low, it's quite a loud feedback on stage. We'll have an opportunity to network and all be together quite shortly. We just have 2 more presentations to go, and then we go into a break. So from Congo Children's Trust, we have Joel Kindidwe, and we also have Karine Bahati. So if you could please just help me take Tim to get them online, and then I just will stand here to make sure that, oh, there we go, Elvis.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Over to you. Over to you.
Okay. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Elvis Nshimba. I am the founder and CEO of Umoja Sport Foundation. Today, I will talk about Umoja Sport. Umoja Sport is a non-profit organization based in the Democratic Republic of Congo for bringing positive change to youths, but also adults. To understand what the word means, Umoja comes from Swahili and means unity. We use the power of sport to bring people together. Once they gather, we discuss social issues that prevent sustainable development, and we also discuss strategies to find solutions to the problem. Next. Why did we establish Umoja Sport? Education rate in DRC, as you may know, is among the lowest in Africa. And this situation results in extreme poverty of households, high level of unemployment and criminality, gender inequality, but also ignorance of health issues. We have general health issues, and we have reproductive and sexual health issues, but also climate change. Next. Next, please. Umoja Sport was established as a response to this issue with a mission to create a safe and thriving community for both boys and girls, men and women, regardless of their origin or their community position. Next, please. Our vision is that by 2035, we would like to contribute actively to a sustained Congo where youths have equal access to education and where youths are resource for the community. They can find solutions in a sustainable but also innovative way. Next, please. How do we get to our goal? Umoja Sport suggests 3 key programs that we call Umoja Innovative Solutions. The first program is sports program. We use football. As you know, football gathers crowds of people, but also we use sports for development. Sometimes we don't need football. Sometimes we don't need any sports equipment, but we use sport as a tool, exactly as what Professor Oscar Mwanga has said. Sports allows us to bring positive change of mindset with all of the beneficiaries, and our sport is designed for both youths and adult people. The second pillar is education programs, where we have lots of out-of-school youths. We gather them in one of our classrooms, and they learn literacy, French literacy. They also learn English and computer science. And we have health classes for women, namely the menstrual health management and the sexual reproductive health. These 2 programs allows women to stay in class, to stay in school and achieve their education. And also we have the full cycle education where we sponsor out of school youth. Some of them are sponsored so that they can go further with their education. The last key program is economic empowerment. Our women, when they come for sport alone is not enough to bring change. We use sport to raise awareness. We use sport to have the change of mindset. And then beyond sport, our early mothers and mothers from the community are enrolled in sewing classes where they learn vocational skills that can really bring tangible change in their households. And then they also learn financial literacy. The aim is that after they learn this, they are able to start small business and bring that positive change of incomes in their families. Next, please. Umoja Sporting data, this last year, we have been able to reach approximately 4,000 people in all our 3 main programs, in sports, in education, and in economic empowerment, as you can see the slide. Next. This is one of our examples. So this is one of our success story. We are very proud of Gloria Yumba. Gloria Yumba is one of the first girls and early mothers who attended our sewing class. Just after attending it now, she has been supported by her family and by Umoja Sport. She got a sewing machine and she started her sewing shop. And we are very proud of her, and we will keep accompanying her as well as reaching out to those who studied together with her. And this way we can really bring positive change. Next. How do we survive? Umoja Sport is a non-profit organization. We mobilize individual donors across the world. We also submit grant application, and we plan to start selling our products from economic empowerment. So the plan is to create a first private service in health issues to create a bank of sanitary pads that will be selling and providing accurate information to women. And then the funds that we collect from the selling will get back to the program. Next slide, please. Now you can join us. We are on social media. You can join us, or you can send us a message to our main address email. We are very happy to collaborate with everyone. Umoja Sport believes in the cooperation. Umoja Sport believes in the ecosystem. Someone said at the beginning that if you want to go fast, walk alone. But if you want to go far, you need to work in a team. And as you may know, Democratic Republic of Congo is currently having very, very severe issues at the eastern DRC, the eastern part of the country, where there are killings, massacres, and the war that has not ended for over 2 decades. And Umoja Sport is eager to collaborate with any entities, any organization, or any institutions to bring peace, because we believe in the power of sport, and we can help rehabilitate all of those displaced people who are currently suffering from trauma or who do not have a choice in their life, by providing them quick necessary skills so that they can find a way to survive. Yeah, next, please. Thank you so much. And my special thanks goes straight to Sport for Social Change Network and to Mr. Alan, who is in charge of Sport for Social Change, but also to the whole assembly for following us. Thank you.
Thank you so much from Elvis. We'll now move over to the Congo Children's Trust. I believe we've got Karine and Joel online already. While we get them to join us, please remember to take photos and please tag us on social media. My voice is echoing after me. Okay, while we get them to join us and we get their faces up, please remember to tag us on social media, hashtag SSCN, and please remember that we do have free Wi-Fi. Do not rush out after this presentation. I've got a few announcements to make it easier for everybody that is joining. Do we have Karine and Joel online? I can hear you, Karine. We're just going to get your visual up. There we go. We can see you. Can you hear us clearly? You're muted. Yeah, she's going to do it now. She heard.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Over to you. Okay, I'm going to come and stand here, Karine, and just make sure that you're able to hear us. You're unmuted now.
Okay.
Proceed. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Beauty of technology. Okay, I need a voice. Okay, there we go. Karine, are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. We can't see it, however, so I think you've switched off your camera. Are there two of you sitting in the same room?
Yes, but this one is, can you put it off?
So one of you needs to switch off your visual and your sound completely. We can only have one camera on and one mic on in order for us to work and for us to not get feedback. So can one of you please put on a camera and a sound? Yes, perfect. And then the other one needs to keep their camera and their sound off completely. Okay. Can you
All
hear
right,
us now?
it's fine.
There we go. Thank you. You may proceed.
Can I start?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karine Bahati from ONG Kimbilio, Sanctuaire des Enfants. The name Kimbilio means in Swahili, a place to run to be safe. And this is what we want for each child to come to our service. At Kimbilio, original vision was to provide essential support to homeless children living on the street without parental support. Our aim was to help them to find a renewed hope, enable them to have fresh opportunities and change in life. Since June 2009, Kimbilio has been providing support to children experiencing family breakthrough from all corners of the Democratic Republic of Congo, without distinction of social affiliation, region, tribe, race, or region. It is through a process of listening, advising, mental, physical education, and medical care that our supervisor work in the social and family integration of children by identifying caring adoptive home in the case where there is no
We're experiencing Karine? Yeah, I think so. I think so.
pursue a society where every child has the opportunity to go again.
Okay, the beauty of technology. I'm going to ask you to please hang 10 for me, Karine. So what we're going to do in the interest of time and everybody else's schedule for today is we will be in touch with Karine and Joel because we want you to hear what it is that they're working on, but we'll reschedule them somehow into the program quite early tomorrow morning because they're doing some really incredible stuff and we want to hear about it appropriately so. It'll give us and the team as well an opportunity to work on the technical issues and to check it with them because the gremlins seem unhappy at the moment. So we'll sort that out for tomorrow. Before we leave, however, just a few announcements for everybody. We will be serving lunch at this time. So please feel free to grab some lunch outside. Please remember that we will be back here again later for our gala dinner later tonight. So please be back by 5:30. You will all have an opportunity to showcase the different things you want to showcase to each other. It's going to be an incredible night of networking, not a typical gala dinner at all. Please come dressed in African with a touch of sports. I was quite challenged by that wardrobe. So I hope you're all going to figure it out. African with a touch of sports. And we'll see you back here at 5:30. Also, please, I know how passionate all of you are here. Some of you have gone through the most lengthy flights to get here. You're all working really hard in the sphere of sports for social change in your unique areas. Tomorrow, we will be having parallel sessions, and these sessions will allow for everybody to raise the various topics within those parallel sessions because it's going to be quite robust conversations. We're having scribes in each room so that we can encompass everything together and create an action plan for going forward. Please note that we are not recording any of these things in the parallel session, so feel free to be as open and as honest as possible, because if we're going to move forward, we can only do it if we're being open and honest. And that brings us a close to this plenary session. I love you all already. I'll see you a little bit later. Have a stunning day.
Madame Karine will present. Is there any question?
Modifier qu'on a. Parce que hapa exemple
tutengeneze
kama wakipase hivi